Welcome to We Learn, Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 15 of India, Earliest Times to the 8th Century AD, and the chapter is Rise of Urban Centers. Topics to be covered are Introduction, what is an urban center, the background to the 6th century BC, cities of the 6th century BC, and the city in archaeology. Introduction. The period starting with the 6th century BC saw the emergence of cities in ancient India. For the second time, this urbanization was more significant in the sense that it endured for a longer time and it saw the beginnings of a literate tradition. This tradition, embodied in Buddhism, Jainism, and many important strands of Hinduism, looks back on this period as its formative epoch. The contemporary literature is full of references to cities like Rajagriha, Sravasti, Kashi, etc. The Buddha and Mahavira were preaching to urban audiences most of the time. So the tradition that was embodied in Buddhism, Jainism, and many other strands of Hinduism, and the period starting with the 6th century BC saw a lot of cities being emerging for the second time, urbanization happening, and it persisted for a longer period of time. What is an urban center? Many scholars have tried to define an urban center. On the face of it, it seems fairly easy to define an urban center, but when we get down to details, the problem becomes complicated. For example, some writers believe that the urban center is characterized by a large population. However, it has been pointed out that some modern Indian villages have populations larger than those of some Australian towns. Similarly, some scholars argue that urban centers are larger in size than the villages. However, it's difficult to determine a standard size for the towns. So, an urban center cannot be population or the number of people living cannot be the only criteria to judge or to define an urban center. There are a lot of things which define an urban center. There are a lot of facilities, there are a lot of other things which define an urban center. It means a town or a city where people live and they perform non-agricultural activities. Where agricultural activities are not performed, non-agricultural tertiary activities are performed. The background to the 6th century BC, use of iron and wet rice cultivation. By about 1000 BC, Indians had learnt the art of smelting iron. Over the next 3 or 4 centuries, iron came into increasing use. That is why a large number of iron tools and implements have been found from Ujjain, Sravasti and Hastinapur. Iron weapons in particular have been found in large numbers. These would have increased the power of the warrior classes vis-a-vis the peasants. With more powerful weapons, the warrior classes could extract more wealth from the peasants. So with more powerful weapons, the warrior classes, the classes who were fighting wars, they could extract more wealth from the peasants. And by 1000 BC, Indians, they had learned the art of the smelting iron, and that is why a large number of iron tools and implements have been found in various places, and iron weapons in particular have been found in large numbers, and these would have increased the power of the warrior classes. The iron tools and implements that increase the power of the warrior classes. But let's now again come to the urban center. It's basically an urban center where a large kind of population live, but it is defined by the activities such as industrial activities and tertiary activities where people where there are a lot of factories, manufacturing units, and there are some facilities like of infrastructure, well built roads, and people are involved in their work and also their own jobs. So where the urban center, they were rising in great numbers, and also it has been pointed out that modern villages have populations larger than those of the Australian towns. So only the population cannot be the criteria to define an urban center. Cities of the 6th century BC. Types of cities and towns in literature. The terms that are frequently used to denote cities in ancient Indian literature are Pura, Durga, Nigam, Nagar, etc. Pura. The term Pura is mentioned even in the early Vedic literature, where it referred to fortified settlements or temporary places of refuge or cattle pens. Later on, it is often used for the residence of the king and his retinue, or for the families of the ruling group in the Gana Samghas. So there are various types of cities and towns in literature. And also the term Pura, that is also mentioned in the early Vedic literature, where it is referred to fortified settlements or temporary places of refuge or cattle pens. Durga. This is the other term used for denoting the fortified capital of the king, like a huge capital of a king. Fortifications protected the urban centers and separated them from the surrounding rural areas. So, fortifications, large buildings, these buildings protected the urban centers and they separated them from the surrounding rural areas. Nigam. It is frequently used in the Pali literature to denote a town. It probably meant a merchant town where the sale and purchase of goods used to take place. Nagada. This word is used for the first time in the Tatriya Aranyaka. The image of the city in ancient India. The following reconstruction is based on references in the Buddhist and Brahmanical literature of slightly later period. Books like the Divya Vadana and Apastambar Dharam Sutra provide us with an idea of the city in those times. Ancient Indian literature gives an idealized view of cities. Ayodhya, described in Ramayana, or Vesali, described in the Buddhist texts, would be almost identical if one goes by their description. The cities were surrounded by defensive walls and moats. So this was the image which was there in ancient India. There were defensive walls, there were moats, and also there was Brahmanical literature of the later period. A walk through the city. Towns seem to have grown around the intersection of two highways or along river banks. When you entered the city streets, what would you see? Well, the contemporary literary sources give you a vivid description in this regard. The haze of dust raised by horse hoofs and caravans of merchants which the pious Brahmins disliked so much, the crowds of people clamoring around shops selling various kinds of eatables such as fruits like mangoes, jackfruits and bananas, or sugar candy, cooked rice, etc. So a lot of the crowd of people were clamoring around shops and selling various kinds of eatables, and also there was a well grown intersection of two highways or along the river banks. That is how the city was portrayed. Items of exchange. Markets involved the buying and selling of commodities. People could be seen buying utensils and tools made of metals like iron, copper, tin and silver. Groups of merchants specializing in the procurement and selling of salt could be seen in the streets earmarked for them. So markets that involved buying and selling of goods and services, commodities, that was seen. The cotton cloth of Kasi attracted quite a large number of buyers. Woolen blankets brought from the distant northwestern province of Gandhara could attract only the rich. Horses brought from Sindh and Cambodia would also be on sale. The city in archaeology. The literary sources available to us have undergone several alterations and additions in the subsequent periods. The written manuscripts of these texts which are available to us are less than 1,000 years old. Thus, it is difficult to shift out the material of the later phases of history from the early phases of history. As such, the information derived from excavation reports gives us a more dependable idea regarding the cities of the period. This is because the archaeological data can be dated with greater certainty. Also, the literary sources exaggerate the opulence and splendor of the cities. So that was all about the urbanization and how the cities emerged, how was the picture portrayed, a walk through the city, and that was all about seeing and how was the city portrayed in that particular point of time. So these are some of the questions. You have to do it yourself. Question number 1, write 10 lines on the kind of cities which are referred to in the contemporary literatures. Question number 2, what do the archaeological source tell us about the cities? Write in 10 lines. That's all. Thank you. Happy learning. We learning.